Anybody hear me? Okay, testing, testing. All right, I'll keep talking until you tell me to stop. I'm not hearing anything yet. I'm not hearing anything yet. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. Let's see there. Hello, hello, hello. Testing, testing. Now is the time for all good men to come to the aid of their country. Ah, testing, testing. It says it's pushed all the way over to Mike, so that looks like it. Yeah, it says Mike, so that should be right. Hello, 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 hello. All righty, we'll keep trying, we'll keep trying. Hello, 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 hello. Hmm, I could do that. Let me just do that. Let me go. Let me try.
There was a time that I swore I would never go back. I was blind to the truth, didn't know what I had. I was running, I was searching, but every place I turned for healing left me more broken than the last. Take me back to the place that feels like home, to the people I can depend on, to the faith that's in my bones. Take me back to a preacher and a verse where they've seen me at my worst, to the love I had at first. Oh, I wanna go to church. Trying to walk on my own, but I'm wound up lost. Now I'm making my way to the foot of the cross. It's not a trophy for the winners, it's a shelter for the sinners, and it's right where I belong. Take me back to the place that feels like home, to the people I can depend on, to the faith that's in my bones. Take me back to a preacher and a verse where they've seen me at my worst, to the love I had at first. Oh, I wanna go to church. place that feels like home, to the people I can depend on, to the faith that's in my bones. Take me back to a preacher and a verse, where they've seen me at my worst, to the love I had at first. Oh, I wanna go to church. Yeah, I wanna go to church. Oh, I wanna go. Wanna go, wanna go. Oh, I wanna go to church. Oh, I wanna go to church.
Welcome to church. Welcome to the undying body of the ever-living Son, where God's promises and God's people are radically made one. Welcome to the romance of the world, the marriage ceremony of Christ, where God is betrothed to man by proposing with his life. Welcome to the only place where the unholy can meet holiness and yet holy still survives. Welcome to the only place that you can walk in dead and yet come out alive. Welcome to this place, whether on pews or chairs, in walls or air, under steeples or stairs, by thousands or in pairs. This place is legendary, holy, ancient, modern, famous, hated, living, vibrant, ageless, not because of a location, not because there are cars parked on the pavement, not because you made a sign and named it. This place is an amazement because of the one who creates it. Welcome to the place where individuals are shaped into a larger whole, where bread and wine feed our hearts and intoxicate our souls, where race, money, and power no longer have a role, where the outcast, impoverished, and broken come to be consoled. Welcome to our home, the bride of Christ on a reckless search. Welcome to life. Welcome to church.
Hello. I could see you a minute ago. Now the lights are shining. I can't see you, but I know you're still there. Most of you probably know why I don't look anything like Christine. The reason is not a laughing matter, however. Her mom, Sharon, had surgery yesterday. She, Monday night, was taken into the emergency room. She experienced a pulmonary embolism and had surgery for that yesterday. She said that the surgery was a little rough on her, but she's now breathing better. Let me give you the most recent update. She said that the surgery removed the clots out of her lungs, and they've reduced her oxygen from 4 to 2 today, so that shows progress. They've not gotten her out of bed yet, so O2 still needs to be monitored. Once she begins moving, she's still in ICU, and this is in San Antonio. She went to the emergency room here, and they transferred her to San Antonio. An ultrasound today should give them additional information about where the clots are coming from and what's producing them. So we're not sure how long she'll be in ICU. At this point, I don't think they know. Her sister did fly down from, I think she lives in Wisconsin now, and so her sister's there with her, which is great. It's good for her to have that support. So let's start with a prayer about that and about our service, and then we'll move on from there. Lord, we're just so thankful that you are Jehovah Rapha and that we can trust you. We thank you so much that Sharon made it to help quickly and that her surgery went well yesterday. We ask that you be with the doctors. We ask that you give them even a measure of supernatural wisdom about the decisions to make and what to do for her as they're treating her, Lord. We ask that you be with Sharon and her sister and actually all the family. Just bless them during this time. Give them sweet sleep when they're able to sleep, even more rest than they would normally even get during sleep. We ask that you give them endurance. We thank you for the strength of their trust in you and their faith in you. as we continue to pray throughout the days, Lord, we ask that you would help us to know what we can do to help them and the family. We ask that you be with us tonight as we talk about fasting, the spiritual discipline of fasting, Lord. I ask that you open hearts to possibility and that you encourage your people to do whatever it is you would like them to do, Lord. In Jesus' name, amen. You're there again. I closed my eyes. You're back. So as you're aware, you've been going through some spiritual disciplines, and fasting is a big topic. So big that we're not going to cover all the bases here today. I am going to be focusing, I'll probably do a little overview, and then I'll be focusing specifically on the fasting in the New Testament, which is water fasting, and some, hopefully some insightful information for y'all. Some of you may know something about fasting. Some of you may be expert fasters already and could probably come up here and teach this class. If you haven't fasted before, I hope that you're encouraged to do it, and I have a plan to help you ease into it, so it's not such a big, scary proposition. So let me give you a quick run through of some different types of fasting. There's one thing called a liquid fast. Now, the liquid fast is not mentioned in the Bible. I do have some friends some Christian friends who will do this sometimes as they're led by the Lord to do it. And that mainly is you just don't take in anything that you chew. Now, most of the time when they do that, they are drinking healthy foods because they're either drinking shakes or fruit juices or something like that, but it's not just water. And the ones that I know that do it, it is for a spiritual discipline, and it is to take their focus off of the flesh, off of food, and be able to spend time with the Lord as he directs. So that's what that one is. There's also another one called a partial food fast, which most of y'all might know as a Daniel fast, because that's the one that gets the most information in the Bible. And that one is found in Daniel 10:3. We've had a lot of teaching in this family on the Daniel fast. We've done a number of years. We've done it as a group at the beginning of the year. So we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about the Daniel fast today either. This was a new one as I was studying for this that I hadn't heard this term before. It's called an absolute fast. Now, I've heard it in the secular world called a dry fast, and that's where you don't take in food or water. And that is a very drastic fast. It is mentioned in the Bible. Moses and Elijah both did an absolute fast for 40 days. So knowing how our bodies work, we know that was a spiritual occasion for them, a miracle for them. Well, if this kind of fast really should be an exception and only upon a clear command from God. In fact, as a member of this family, if you're ever considering an absolute fast, especially of more than a couple of days, talk to your pastors, talk it over with them, and get their input on that as well, because that's a very drastic measure to do an absolute fast. Now, it's big these days to talk about fasting other things besides food or water, and there is benefit to that. There is benefit to fasting such things as social media or TV, or maybe even some behaviors that in and of themselves are not necessarily sinful, but they become addictive, or they've become, they could be that it's a behavior that's triggering something emotional within you. That is one thing that, one reason why fasting from social media might be beneficial. In addition to, it can be such a time suck, but because there's so much in social media, in the news, or we just have so much at our fingertips, so much information, that sometimes that can trigger some negative emotions that the Lord would rather we didn't have, like fear or resentment or anger. And the more we expose ourselves to that influx of a media that is by and large meant to incite, it can trigger. And so there are times when the Lord might ask us to fast from those things. I will give this warning, though. Sometimes we might think that fasting some of these other things is a good excuse not to fast in the way the Bible describes as well. So just take that to the Lord. If you feel like that's not going to, that maybe your flesh is saying, oh, you can do this instead. You don't have to do that. Just something to think about. Like I said, always talk it over with the Holy Spirit. And the last fast, which I initially had listed first, but because I'm going to spend a good portion of the night talking about it, is the water fast. This is water only. And it's kind of funny when you think, okay, you're fasting water. No, you're fasting with only water. It's kind of the terminology can be a little misleading. But this was the type of fast that Jesus did when he went out into the wilderness for 40 days after his baptism. In Luke 4, in verse 2, it tells us where he ate nothing. And that's the kind of fast, I think, that a lot of times was done throughout the Bible. Now, of course, Daniel is the exception to that, one exception to that. But it was frequently done. Now, I want to give a side note here. There are some physical benefits to fasting. There can be weight loss or like cleansing, physical cleansing, like a detox. It is good as a time for our body to rest from digestion and related functions, and sometimes it can even help with physical healing. Now, some of those are talked about in that handout I gave you, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. In fact, because this is a spiritual discipline, that is, like I said, just kind of a side note, but that we're discussing tonight is the spiritual discipline aspect of it. In fact, if you're not fasting social media, you could go down a big rabbit hole and find all kinds of interesting information online about the benefits of fasting. All right. So throughout the Bible, fasting is mentioned, starting in the Old Testament, and then even over time, the Jewish people were called to do regular fasts for religious reasons. For example, fasting in connection with the Feast of Atonement was one of them. But over time, that was added to where I think by the time of Zechariah, there were 4 fasts a year that the people were called to participate in, connected to the religion. Now, I remembered at one point, Pastor Michael was sharing how it's actually customary now, and maybe has been for centuries, for people in the Jewish faith to fast once a month. I forget what day. I think there's a specific day of the week that they commonly fast. Paul mentions this about fasting. In 2 Corinthians 11 and 27, he says, "In weariness and toil, in sleeplessness often, in hunger and thirst, in fastings often, in cold and nakedness." So you see, if you heard as I was reading that, he says, in hunger and thirst, comma, in fastings. And so I think because it was separated, because if you're fasting, you're probably going to be hungry and thirsty if you're not drinking enough water. But because they're separated, I think they were 2 different things. Like perhaps the hunger and thirst was just what was happening to him, and the fasting was intentional. All right, so you're probably thinking, well, Tanya, does it say anywhere in the Bible, does it command us to fast? I'm glad you asked. It doesn't actually say, even though there's not a direct command for fasting, there are some passages we're going to look at that not only encourage it, but actually seem to indicate that Jesus would assume we would do it. So let's look at what Jesus says about that. Let's look at, the first passage will be Matthew 6, verses 16 through 18. So this is the Sermon on the Mount, and I'm reading to you from the Modern English Version. It says, "Moreover, when you fast, do not be like the hypocrites with a sad countenance, for they disfigure their faces so they may appear to men to be fasting. Truly I say to you, they have their reward. But you, when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, so that you will not appear to men to be fasting, but to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you openly. So there's a couple things I want to look at this passage. First of all, he says starting with the third word, when you fast. So he assumes that his listeners there at the Sermon on the Mount are going to be fasting. Thought it felt like it was moving. And because of that, he gave instructions about how to do that. And I want you to notice he didn't say if you fast. He says when you fast. So this is one of those places where he, specifically where you can tell he assumes you're going to be fasting. Now you might say, okay, well this, that was the custom of the day. He was speaking to the people of the day, and so that was, well, you'd be right about that. But we're going to look at some more, another application that applies and how this applies to us in another passage. So then he goes on to say, when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face so that you'll not appear to men to be fasting. So this is a good thing to keep in mind when we're fasting. We're not to be bragging about it. We're not doing this so that people will think we're pious or we're special or look at me. That's the point he was getting at. I don't think that he's saying here, oh, it's a big hush-hush secret. Don't ever tell anybody. It's a matter of the heart. So if you happen to be fasting one day and somebody asks you out to eat, I don't think if your heart is sincere that it's a bad thing to say, oh, I really would like to, but I'm fasting today. Or, if you, especially if like there's a group fast and you're wanting to encourage one another, that's the conversation that I don't think is a problem to have. It's just when we're trying to make people think we're better than we are or better than them. So it really is a heart issue. And we'll talk a little bit later about, that what's going on with the heart in there as well. So the question that begs to be asked here is, why are you fasting? Are you fasting to be seen? Are you fasting for other reasons? And we'll be going into some of those reasons. And one in particular, I think that should be the primary reason for when we fast. So let's go over a couple pages and look, actually one page in my Bible, to Matthew 9. This is verses 14 through 15. No, it was 2 pages. It says, then the disciples of John came to him asking, this would be John the Baptist he's referring to, why do we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast? Jesus answered, can the guests of the bridegroom mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom will be taken from them, and then they will fast. So let's dissect this a little bit too. First of all, he was asked a question about his disciples. So I have a question for you. Are you a disciple of Jesus? Say yes. Yes, we're all disciples of his. So that is one indication that this would apply to us, especially when we look at the rest of the verse. Because then he says, when the bridegroom will be taken from them, then they will fast. Has our bridegroom been taken from us? Yes, he has. So that indicates that we are still in the time period. We're still in this time period that along with the disciples that were alive after he died and rose and went back to heaven. So through all of this, even though it's not a command, it really looks like he expects this to happen. It's an expectation, an assumption, because he's not only assuming that we will, in the first passage, that we will fast, but also assuming that his disciples will be fasting after he's taken from us. So another question might come to your mind, and that is, do we need to wait for a rhema word of revelation to tell us to fast? And I mean, people have asked that question before, like, oh, I don't think I should fast, or maybe they've just expressed that opinion. I don't think I should fast unless the Lord expressly tells me to. Well, that kind of flies in the face of these two passages as well. I don't know that is a logical argument for that. And also, it's a mentality that can make it convenient for us not to fast. If we have that opinion, it's real easy to, oh, well, I haven't heard it directly. God didn't tell me to do it. Well, he kind of did. He didn't speak to you necessarily directly about it. Of course, he may have, as a matter of fact. But so, like I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, we brought up the question, why are you fasting? So really, what is our motive or goal? Granted, there are many spiritual benefits. Let me list some of those for you. It can help with success in prayer, in doing with power, increasing rhema, revelation, and spiritual insights. I think all of y'all are familiar with the word rhema, so that's, logos is the written word, rhema is the word that we receive directly from the Lord. It helps give us extra time for devotion and quiet time with God. If you think about, on an average day, how much time it takes to think about and plan the food we're going to eat, then prepare the food we're going to eat, then clean up the mess. That is just a big chunk of time that we could devote to the Lord. In fact, I would encourage that be how it's spent. If you're fasting and there's no connection with in the spiritual discipline of fasting, if you're fasting, I think I heard it said this way one time. If you're fasting and it's not connected with prayer, you're just dieting. And I think there's a lot of truth in that statement. So it also proves how God sustains us. We see in Matthew 4:4 where he says, "But he answered and said, it is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God." And this next one, I don't know that people think about this very often, but I think it's really important. It helps our spirit to be dominant over our soul and our flesh, because we're telling our soul and our flesh no. And a lot of times it's our flesh, a lot of times it's, oh, I'm just really hungry, and it's a physical thing, but sometimes it's our soul. Sometimes like, I'm bored. I want to eat something. Or we may think we're hungry, and we're not, but we're just accustomed to eating. So that is part of what we're supposed to be doing in our spiritual walk, is making our spirit dominant over our soul and flesh, and fasting is a good tool for that. All right, so you'll find in that handout I gave you, you'll find some more about the benefits of spiritual benefits as well when you have a chance to read that in your spare time. While you're fasting and you have a little extra time, you can read that. Also, on the back of that, I wrote a recommendation for a book that I really enjoyed by Mahesh Chavda. In fact, I noticed in that handout there, this is a handout that we received when we were in ministry school. And I found it in my notes, so I wanted to share that with you. But that book by Mahesh Chavda was really encouraging to me on the discipline of prayer. Right. So, back to the goals and the motives. If the goal or motive, roll that back a minute. To wrap up what I was saying about that, our goal, in my opinion, should be to be centered and more focused on the Lord. Even though we have all these other benefits, if our goal is to get all these other things, aren't we just trying to manipulate him to give us something? It's not wrong to receive the blessings of the discipline. But it's back to our heart. I think we need to be more careful about why we're fasting. And really, in connection with that, one of the biggest benefits that I found to fasting is increasing our intimacy with the Lord. And I can't help but think that blesses him. I can't help but think that he's pleased that is a benefit. That we are, as a discipline, so Miss Christine's probably gone over this in one way or another. The spiritual disciplines are not just so that we can mark it off the list. That's not what they're about. And it's also not so we can earn our salvation. We already know that. But it blesses the Lord for us to be obedient for a couple reasons. For this one, I think, because we draw closer to him, but also because he knows that it's doing something that's the best for us. So all of these spiritual disciplines that y'all been studying, those are the reasons. It's not to earn anything. It's not to be able to say, oh, I did my duty today, mark that off the list and feel better about myself. And the same thing goes with fasting. So one person said about it said this about it, said, focusing on God is the only way we'll be saved from loving the blessing more than the blesser. That was very impacting to me. That we're not in this to get. We're in this because we already got. to put it another way, and focusing on the Lord in fasting. All right, so let me tell you a little bit about some of the practicals regarding fasting. So even though we're talking about doing it as a spiritual discipline, there are some physical realities that go along with this. So some of these are to help you understand what's going on in ourselves when we're fasting, our body, and others are tips really to. I guess I don't really want to say make it easier, but in a way it can make it easier if we're smart about how we're doing this. So let me give you these tips. First of all, if you're just starting out, I would recommend that you start slow. I don't recommend, if you've never fasted before, unless the Lord expressly tells you that you go jump into a 5-day water fast. I think that would be very hard. So I would recommend that you start slow. Maybe you just start with, you just skip a meal. Skip one of your 3 meals. You may maybe do that a few days in a row, or it doesn't even have to be consecutive. Just kind of do that for a little bit. Then skip 2. Then you can work up to skipping that 3rd meal. So then essentially you might have, maybe you have a little something in the morning and a little something at night. So you might be doing a 12-hour fast. Which here's the thing. We really do that just about every day while we sleep. So in effect, if you didn't have anything in the morning or at night, then you've done a 24-hour fast. But my point is, if we work into that slowly, then it's going to be easier for us to make sure that we stick to it. I'll just put it that way. And so if we can give ourselves an advantage to be able to do what we've committed to do, then that's one way to do it. Now, I want to tell you, I've done, and then after you've worked up to the 24-hour fast, maybe do a few of those, and sporadically. I'm not, maybe do one a week for a while or something like that. Then you can work your way up to like a 3-day, and I'm talking water fast here. You can work your way up to like a 3-day fast. Maybe a 5-day or a 7. Eventually work up to these. And I'll tell you, I've done quite a few of the 3-day water fasts, and I've done a couple of the 5-day water fasts. If I can do it, you can do it. I know you can. We'll talk about some exceptions to that at the end about people who should not fast. So I'll make sure that that's out there as well. But so it's helpful to know really what's going on in your body as you fast. Like by the 3rd day of a fast can be the hardest because is in regarding physical discomfort and hunger, because your body is detoxing by that point. And you can experience a coating on your tongue. You can even some bad breath. So the people around you might really be suffering. But you also might experience headaches, especially if you were an avid coffee drinker or a tea drinker or any of these caffeine drinks, and you just stopped cold turkey for the fast. Then you might experience some headaches. All of these are nothing to be afraid of. It's normal, and can't really be used as an excuse to stop. I'll just put it that way. It really is just a natural result. By the 4th day, the hunger starts to subside, and you might experience some weakness and dizziness. And typically the dizziness is temporary. It's usually triggered by sudden movement. So if you're into that stage of a fast, then you want to be just move slow. Be sure you get enough rest. All always, always, always drink a lot of water. And sometimes just a little pinch of salt in your water will help in two ways. It helps with the electrolyte balance in your body, but it also helps you, they've just discovered this, within the last 10 years, I think. It helps your cells to absorb the water better with just a little bit of salt in it. Just a quick health tip for any time, even not when you're fasting. So, needless to say, a water fast is probably not the best time to be doing your strenuous workouts. You might want to take a pause from that. Okay, so I'm told, since I haven't experienced this, I'm told that by the 6th and 7th day you can begin to feel stronger and more alert, and the hunger is quite diminished. You might even feel good as your body eliminates the toxins. And I have known of some people in the current day that do 40-day water fasts, and that's one of the things that they claim as well, is that it's not like the whole 40 days you're just ravenously hungry. I haven't signed up for a 40-day fast. I don't know. I would need direct revelation from the Lord, I think, to try to do a 40-day fast. And I have heard Pastor has mentioned in the past, too, that's even a water fast. Now, of course, I was talking about the absolute fast before, which is a dry fast, but even a 40-day water fast, I would encourage you that if you get to the point where you feel like the Lord's directing you with that, then talk to your pastors about it, too, and kind of get their input on it. That's part of what they're here for, is to help guide us. So, all right. You will most likely feel cold during a water fast. That's normal, too. It has to do with your body processes and producing heat within your body. So dress warm. One tip, and I know Miss Christine does this quite often when she's fasting, and that's just to drink some warm water. And I know that sounds nasty, but it's really not. I do it sometimes, too, and it can be very soothing, especially if you're fasting in the winter. I'll tell you that. So, all right. Don't eat extra before you start a fast to stock up. In fact, you want to eat slightly lighter than normal meals the day before a fast. And also, one thing that I've done that I really noticed helped was I got completely off of sugar for at least a week before a fast. So you're dealing with the sugar cravings and trying to break that sugar addiction possibly prior to your fast. And also, along those same lines, if you are drinking a lot of caffeinated drinks, or it might be good to at least greatly minimize those the week before your fast, or even eliminate them, so that you're not dealing with all of these other side effects of fasting and a headache at the same time. It really greatly minimizes the headaches. I guess I'm not real sensitive to caffeine. I haven't ever experienced a headache with a fast, but I know it's pretty common, especially with people that drink a lot of coffee. Let's talk about breaking an extended fast, and that I consider an extended fast, and most people do, as being one that's 24 hours or more. You think our minds would think, oh, I can't wait till this fast is over. I'm going to eat this great big meal. I just can't wait. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold your horses, as my mom used to say. That can cause some severe gastric distress. So this is how I typically break up an extended fast. You can find a variety of ways online, but this one has worked for me. The first thing I do is I'll drink a cup of warm bone broth. And you can, not everybody makes their own. It's a lot of work. You can get bone broth at the grocery store. You've probably seen it. It's right there with all the other broths. I like the H-E-B brand. It's really tasty, but there's a whole wide range of brands, and they vary in price range too. So, and then after you have that bone broth, wait 30 minutes. Just let that settle. Just go about your business for 30 minutes, and then if you're feeling good after 30 minutes, then go ahead, and what I like to do is eat half of an avocado. There's specific health reasons for that, but if you don't like avocado, then you might want to do like half a cup of soft cooked vegetables, like maybe carrots or cauliflower, something like that. You don't want something that's going to be hard to digest. Do not do raw veggies at that time. Raw vegetables, as good as they are for you, they are a little bit harder for your stomach to digest, and your stomach's been on vacation for a little bit. So it needs to be eased back into the process. So after you've done that, then you wait another uh, like 30 minutes to an hour. If you're still feeling good, you can tolerate um, dairy, then you can have like some milk or some yogurt. But even that, you only eat a little bit. Your stomach really has shrunk during this time period, so you don't want to go eat a big amount of anything, and you want to be careful about what you're eating. So then, as you're starting to feel good, as you continue to feel good, you can start to add in some more easily digestible foods after that. I guess because I've done a number of them, I can slide into my stomach handling it pretty quickly with this process. Others you might find, I'm feeling just a little queasy. I think I better wait a little bit, wait a little bit longer. Of course, continue to drink your water. Always need to, by the next day, you can start to reintroduce the raw vegetables and the fruit, and later in that day, you can start adding in your meat and your fish, things like that. Avoid greasy and starchy vegetables for a bit until you're sure your system is back to normal. Like I said, don't break your fast with a big meal, even though your mind is desiring it, and you might even think you deserve it after all that time. I'm ready. Well, no. Your mind may be ready, but your stomach isn't. So really take that into consideration. So another thing to think about is that and I know pastors have talked about this when we've done the Daniel fast too. When we do these kind of fasts, it really is a good time during the fast and afterwards to really reevaluate what your dietary lifestyle is like. If you've done something really good for your body physically, it would be a shame to just automatically start filling it up with a whole bunch of junk that you just finished detoxing. So I'm not saying you have to make a total dietary change, but you're in a good place with your mind to be able to kind of make some of those changes if your diet needs it. It may already be great. All right. This is the caveat. This is the part where I'm gonna. What do they call it when you're doing a video or something and they're saying, "I'm not a doctor," but blah blah blah. Anyway, here is something to keep in mind. It's also important to note that not everybody should fast. For diabetics, for example, although I will tell you, my husband's type 1 and he occasionally fasts, but he's able to do that because he does take insulin, so he's able to regulate his blood sugar. Expectant mothers, nope. Heart patients, I've heard, nope. Things like that. So, in fact, if you have to take food when you take a prescription medicine, let's say, for example, you take a prescription med once a day, and you might not ever be able to do more than like a 23 to 24-hour fast because you have to take food with that medicine. So my encouragement to you is if you have any question whatsoever about whether it would be okay for you health-wise to fast, a water fast, then check with your doctor on that. Because there could be some extenuating circumstances that, okay, I can't do that. Well, okay, you can do some of these shorter fasts. You can do a Daniel fast, things like that. So just those are kind of things to keep in mind. All right. Well, at least it was longer than half an hour. What kind of questions do y'all have? Any questions? I'll try to answer them. Chloe's chewing. She's thinking about eating over there after all this talk of fasting. Who wants to start a fast tomorrow? That was a loaded question. I know I gave you a lot of information today about that, especially like all this information about breaking a fast and all that kind of stuff. If you decide to go into this and you need that resource, I didn't expect you to remember all of these details from one night, but I'll have it. If you ever want to talk to me about fasting, I love it. Well, okay, let me say it this way. I don't enjoy fasting, but I'm glad to do it, and I'm glad I do it. I'll say it that way. And I think part of the point of this as being a physical discipline, like we talked about with putting our flesh under, is it's not meant to necessarily be enjoyable. You know, that's part of it. That's part of the character building in being able to say no to self. So, all right. Well, if there's no questions, no, that's okay. That just means I did a good job. All right. Well, thank you for coming tonight. Um, I'm not sure what kind of needs Miss Christine and her family will need over a period of time. I'll try to, along with others I know that are keeping updated on the progress. Um, we'll try to keep y'all up to date if they end up doing like a food train or something like that. We'll try to let everybody know about that. And of course, please continue to pray and pray with hope, because that's what we have. We have hope. All right. Need to go to bed early tonight, Chloe. She just, oh no. All right. Thanks, guys. Y'all are dismissed.